Following more on this, joining me now to discuss this historic day is political analyst in the United Kingdom, Professor Tim Wilson. Professor Tim Wilson, great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining me here on A News. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Right, now, let's get in this.
Thank you.
Now, the Queen was head of state. What sort of active role, if any, did the Queen play while she was head of state?
Well, very little in this particular case. In the case of Barbados, Barbados had a lot of independence, so it had a very special relationship with the Crown. The Queen was defined as the Queen of Barbados, and so I think the idea was that having the monarch as head of state provided some sort of stability. Now, Britain, certainly throughout the 20th century and in the 21st century, has clung to the idea, it champions the principle of self-determination. This has got us into some trouble, but I think it's a good principle. And when you look at what's happened since the Barbadians decided to have a complete independence, to become a republic, two significant events have occurred. The first one is legal, and the second one is physical. So the statue of Nelson, which was in the main square, which has now been called Golden Square Freedom Park, I think, was taken down almost the day after this decision was taken, about a year ago. The statue was covered in graffiti. "Take me down," it said. And so this is part of that wave of anti-colonial statue pulling down that we saw across the US and the UK. But I don't know about Nelson. Nelson was a committed colonialist, and he was opposed deeply to William Wilberforce and his campaign to abolish slavery. But Nelson was a man of his own time, and I'm inclined to think that Nelson, rather like John Maynard Keynes, would have taken the view that when the events change, I change my mind. He was part of his time. So on the one hand, you saw the statue being taken down. On the other hand, there was a thing called the Charter of Barbados, which has just been published, and in it sets out the idea that sexual orientation is a right for the first time. Now, one of the problems of the Barbadian government system is it kept a lot of colonial legislation, and the LGBTQ community was greatly offended by, particularly in 1992 Sexual Offences Act, which pretty well reproduced laws which were outdated in the UK. Mm-hmm. Now, many of these were not acted on, but they are still there. So this this charter sends out a signal to other Caribbean countries which have the same sort of legal, archaic legal systems in place. So, okay. It's a great way to move forward.
Okay, it's a way but this seems like it's a big deal for Barbados. But how has it been received in the UK? I mean, all the international news are talking about it, but in the UK, is it a big deal, or is it just moving forward with the times?
I think it's just moving forward with the times. There was no big build-up for it. In fact, we might have missed it had we not switched on the television this morning. And we say, a lot of the international media has picked up this, but there was an interesting report about Barbados itself, and a lot of Barbadians were equally fairly indifferent. Not very much changes. Dame Sandra Mason, who is now the president of Barbados, she's a former teacher. She was a Court of Appeal judge, but she was also the Queen's Governor General. So there hasn't been a great shift in power. There's a shift in status, but not a great shift in power. The Queen sends her warmest good wishes. Prince Charles makes it very clear that there's continuity and friendship. He plays polo, or he used to play polo a great deal in Barbados. And so it's a dignified transfer of power. Now, On the other hand, it could possibly. We've got the tidying up of laws, we've got the tidying up of image, but there is a suspicion this may trigger a domino effect or a chain reaction.
I was going to take you there in a second. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've got 54 members of the Commonwealth.
Right.
We've got the Queen as head of state of
15.
15.
15, okay.
Yes, 15 now. There's 16 Caribbean Commonwealth countries. There is a lot of Republican sentiment growing for, if we see Barbados today, we may see Jamaica and the Bahamas next. Australia narrowly voted for a monarchy in 1999. Now, there's a YouGov poll which says that if the same referendum took place today, there would be a 62% vote in favour of a republic. But if we come back to Barbados for a second, we should be focusing on Barbados. We should be celebrating Barbados' new independence. But there was an attempt to have a referendum in Barbados. That didn't happen. And this and there is a suspicion that this is a sort of political window dressing. I think it's a positive step. People should have their own identity. People should take control of their own future.
Sure,
and their own laws.
All right, last question, the one I have here. Do you think it could any of this have to do with perhaps the royal family being not as popular as they used to be?
Well, there was a story that I think in Barbados, somebody saying some years ago now, when Prince Harry was being particularly naughty, that should the Queen die, should Prince Charles and Prince William die, we wouldn't want Prince Harry to be king. But since then, Prince Harry did a very successful visit to Barbados. Yes, there's a lot of worrying behaviour in the royal family, but the monarchy, I think, will survive that.
Sure.
And this is one of the reasons why I think Prince Charles is out there. Prince Charles is establishing continuity. There are lots of things going on at the moment. There is also, as you will be aware, a US book that alleges Prince Charles was the person who talked about Prince Harry's children's complexion, which is vigorously denied. So I should add, allegedly talked about this. And then of course there is the continuing saga of Prince Andrew. But I think the Queen is held in great respect throughout all the nations she represents and throughout the Commonwealth. I think people will be countries will be very reluctant to opt for a Republican identity at this stage while she is still alive.
Indeed. Well, let's hope she stays alive for at least a few decades more. Tim Wilson, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks for catching up and telling us what you thought about the whole thing. We needed your help on this one. Thanks very much. Take care and stay safe.